Alright, greetings everybody, and welcome back to another Football Manager video. This is the 2005 version that I did a video about recently, although, well, I recorded it a while ago, but I should have released it relatively recently. I'm back on the same save, and I've completed my second season. I just felt that I'd released a lot of videos that showed me winning the league, and doing really well, and winning. I won the Challenge Cup in one of those videos. But this time things are a bit different. I want to show the struggles of Football Manager for me, because obviously I'm not the best player, even though I claim to know the game, certainly these older versions, fairly well. I still struggle with it. I'm not. My knowledge of football is not really on a par with a lot of other people's. My knowledge of tactics isn't that great. It's not always great when playing Football Manager for me, and it can often be a grind, it can often be tedious. It can certainly get the emotions going, that's all I'll say. To cut a long story short, that is the long story short. You can see our league position there, 11th. That doesn't tell the whole story though, and I will go into depth. Hopefully this won't last as long, because most of the games I show aren't that good from my point of view, so that we won't be talking about them in depth. But first season, just to recap, if you didn't watch the first video, I got promoted in my first season, 74 points, pretty clear to Hamilton, miles ahead of Falkirk, good goal difference, everything like that. And obviously, once you get promoted from the Scottish First Division, or the Championship as it's now called, you get to the SPL, or the Premiership as it's now named. First season in a new division, second bottom, 30 points, which is an average of less than 1 per game, 31 goals scored, which is almost half of what we scored last season, over double the amount of goals conceded. And yeah, obviously that's kind of not really a shock, because we're in a higher division with better players, better teams, better managers, more money going about, and obviously two of the biggest teams that are, biggest teams in the world in terms of things like fan base, stadium, history, legacy, that sort of thing. Obviously in terms of money these days, they're not on a par with England, but in this game they are certainly two of the biggest, as proven by the fact that Celtic actually got to the Champions League, or the European Cup, or whatever you want to call it. They got to the European Cup semi-final here, as you can see. Anyway, this isn't trying to big up the old farm. The point is, this league is far, far more difficult than the First Division. In some ways, I'm happy with 11th place. In some ways, given what happened previously this season, I'm jubilant that we got 11th place. There's a bit of me that wishes we could have got at least, a bit higher up. On the last day of the season, we could have actually gone 10th if we'd won, but we drew. And unfortunately, we remain 2 behind our rivals Dundee. But there you go. You can't get everything in life. I'm happy just to be in the division. Let's start. So, basically, after getting promoted, it's been a while since I've played a game with a promoted team, a team I've got promoted. And immediately, the easy thing to do would be to go and spend a lot of money and sign a lot of players, which I kind of did. This is players in this season. Basically, if you ignore this bottom one, Jason Dare, everything from him up, everything from Jim Hamilton up, were people I brought in order to strengthen the team. Now, I did want to keep a core of the players that got us promoted, because I felt some of them were very good. And just to go through a few of them, Mark Baxter played 34 games this season, 6.9 average rating, which is actually good in comparison with the rest of the team, I think. I kept him on because he's pretty decent. He was in our First Division winning squad. Ross Forsyth, he was a left back. He played 34 games as well. They got exactly the same average rating and played exactly the same number of games. They were my mainstays at fullback, Mark Baxter and Ross Forsyth, and they both played in my First Division squad, so they stayed on. Ian Maxwell, he played 37 games. He was a mainstay in my First Division winning team, so he played a bit. David Hanna started 8 games, 13 as sub. Didn't play amazingly well, but again, another First Division player. Paul Sheeran played a bit, 25, appeared in 25 games, did alright. He was in our First Division team. Alan Mahood was one of our top players last season. I played him in 37 games this season. He got an above 7 average rating, which obviously makes him one of the best players this season, again, which is fantastic. What was his average rating last season? Yeah, he got 7.4 last season, 7.16 as well. We can round up to 7.2. So he did really well. Hamidou Balboni, he played in our first division winning team. Didn't play that well this season though, but he did start 12 games, 10 as sub. Ryan Stevenson appeared in 28 games. Did okay, got a few goals, but he was in our first division team. Who else was in our first division team? Some of the strikers were as well, although none of them really set the world alight, unfortunately. So the point being, I did keep on a kind of core of my first division squad, but I knew I had to supplement them. I knew a lot of the players I already had just weren't good enough, so I went and bought a bunch of players, okay? I won't go through all of them, because some of them, like, say for example Jason Thompson, I bought him more as a youth player. He's decent, he's 18, hopefully he'll improve in future, although I still haven't got to grips with training, partly because I haven't tried, but also because I can just leave it to my assistant in this version. As you can see, responsible for training. Oh yeah, side note, Brian Laudrup is my assistant manager for, I think I signed him on a 5-year deal, which is fantastic. So yeah, I signed Brent Sanche from Dundee, signed him on a pre-contract agreement. How did he do this season? He actually didn't do that well. He got less than a 6.5 average rating. He did play 19 games. He would have played more, but he was just absolutely garbage, man. I mean, he did well towards the back end of the season, but like, see for example here, Dundee United on the 11th of February got 4. He's a good utility man. He can play in a lot of positions, but he doesn't have the consistency. I also signed this player Garry Brady from Dundee, a central midfielder, on a pre-contract. He played very well. He got an above 7 average rating, which is good for this team. He did pretty well. Pretty chuffed with that signing. We signed this guy. Now this guy was an interesting one, Noel Whelan. Signed him from Aberdeen on a pre-contract. He's 31 now, so he's getting on a bit. He's only got 1 more year left on an almost £2,000 a week contract, which is insane. But he got 7 average rating. He was our top scorer. Bit of a frustrating character because he scored a lot, but his shots on target is less than half, which is not great from one of your strikers. I signed him because I saw he was going to get released by Aberdeen, and I thought he might be proven somewhat in the top division, so I might as well go for him. Got in ahead of a few other clubs, and it proved arguably to be a lifesaver. But we might need to replace him next season. It just depends. Signed Mark Campbell from Falkirk for 12k, which was second highest fee of the season. He didn't actually do that well, 6.5 rating. I didn't play much, although he did get a spell towards the end of the season, or certainly around this time he got a spell and he did alright. So at the start he wasn't that good, but he came on better as we went on. Charlie Adams was injured for most of the season. He was alright. Signed him on a pre-contract from Rangers, or no, I signed him on a free I think after he got released. He did okay, but he's not the level of quality I would want from a player in this division if I want to push up the table. I signed this guy Lee Marshall. He was released by West Brom, I think. Didn't do that well, unfortunately. Mark Birchall, I signed him after he got released by a Premiership club, Portsmouth, I think. He was supposed to be a really good striker, but unfortunately, his shots on target is less than 40%, almost 30%. So he's getting 1/3 of his shots on target. Not great. His average rating is less than 6.5. He was just rubbish. And at some point in the season, he handed in a transfer request, and I was like, yes, I will gladly list you for transfer by request. Feels he's been treated unfairly. See, the thing is, okay, he shouldn't really be an important first team player. He's backup, but the thing is, he's rubbish. I would gladly play him every game if he actually played well, but the fact is, he's rubbish. He's good in real life, or he was good in real life, but in game he's just rubbish. Craig Dargo, he got injured for 3 months, which almost was a big blow, but thankfully we didn't miss him an awful lot. He almost got 7 average rating. Signed him on a pre-contract, I think, from Kilmarnock, so pretty happy with that. He did fairly well. 5 goals, 4 assists, not too bad. Craig Sampson was our second choice goalkeeper for the start of the season, but he was our first choice for the second half. You'll see why in a bit. But look at his mentals. His mentals are just rubbish. And I had a look at loads of goalkeepers, and they all had rubbish mentals. Disheartening. I mean, he did get 5 clean sheets, which I'm sure is more than our other keeper, who is called Jorge Silva. Okay, he got 3 clean sheets. But his average rating is 6.3. I kid you not. He went through a patch where he had like a rating of 5 for every match. He was my first choice goalkeeper for the start. His mentals are probably on average slightly better. I signed him on a free, by the way. He's 34. his contract's going to run out, I'm just going to release him because he made way too many errors, and part of the reason for that is because his decision making's at 2. That's what I'm guessing anyway. He got all his shots on target. But yeah, his average rating is just horrendous. He's not on a big wage, but there's no point in having a player if I'm too scared to play him, you know what I mean? I might as well just sell him. The sad thing is, he was actually really good at the start of the season. He was arguably our best player at the start of the season. Even when we were losing, he was still the best player because he kept us in games. But then there just came a moment where he just couldn't perform. So yeah, a bit disheartening there. This was arguably an even bigger failure. So Scott Wilson, I actually tried to sign him last season. I tried to sign him, but he went to Hamilton instead. And then I thought, right, first mission is to get this guy for my team in the SPL. And as you can see, he's actually good. Like, arguably, he should be really good. But his problem is, well, I mean, his average rating is okay, and he's got a couple of goals, but he just wasn't very consistent. He would have an off day. Like, look at that, a 5 there, 6 there. I barely played him. This was a good run of games we had towards the end of the season. I barely played him, so it's a real shame. And the thing is, £90,000 he cost. I think, is that my most expensive transfer to date? We can probably check that up here. Highest fee paid, yeah, that's our highest transfer fee. He just hasn't performed. I'll explain how I got that money in a bit. Jim Hamilton, we signed on a pre-contract from Livingston. He is trash. His average rating there is awful. I just didn't play him, and he handed in a transfer request as well, looking forward to leaving the club. I might keep him because I think he didn't really fit my formation. At the start of the season I didn't use wingers. In the second half of the season I was playing too deep. He's more of a target man, someone you stick in the box, lob balls into. I might try and keep him and try and make it work, because I've still got him for another year, unless someone comes in for him. But otherwise, he's pretty much finished. So that was all our summer signings from last season. The reason I'm talking about this is because a lot of these signings were the underlying story to the season. Some of them succeeded, some of them didn't. Some of them flopped. These are the players I sold. Peter Flynn. This is actually an interesting character because I think I signed him. He didn't have a club. Saints was his first club. And I put him on trial. He did okay by the looks of things. He played a few games for us. And then I sold him for $5,000 to Kidderminster, who clearly played him a lot, although he didn't do amazingly well, as you can tell, with a 6.15 average rating. Yeah, and he's transfer listed. So another player that hasn't done that well since leaving. The final transfer was one of the biggest, or it was the biggest fee I've ever received for a player. It was Kevin Ruchevic's. Now I was going to keep this guy on. Let's see, yeah, records, highest transfer fee received, 100,000. I was going to keep this guy on at Saints, but Cali came in and inquired, so I thought, I wonder how much I can get. So I went for the 100 grand. They agreed to pay, and then I thought, brilliant. If I get the 100 grand for Ruchevic's, I can buy Scott Wilson, who is on balance probably better than Ruchevic's. That's Kevin Ruchevic's at the minute. Seems like he got a load of game. Yeah, he seems to have done really well for Cali. But yeah, he went to Cali. We got, and as a result of getting that 100 grand, we could sign Scott Wilson. So that's where I got the 90,000 from, because originally my transfer budget was like 4,000 or something stupid like that. So, you know, with a transfer budget of 4,000, of course I'm not going to be able to take the league by storm unless I'm somehow really skilled or really lucky, of which I'm neither, or was neither. Anyway, one transfer I made halfway through the season was I used £2,000 that I'd left in my transfer budget halfway through to sign Jason Dare as a winger, because I realised we needed wingers for one of the formations I was playing. Unfortunately, he's got 2 years left on his contract, but hopefully he won't lose pace too quickly, and even if he does, we can just play him at full back or something like that. That was a panic buy, okay? I did not intend to buy him. It was a panic buy. I accept that. I'm not good at transfer dealings, as you can tell by the size of my squad here, and obviously I've got a full reserves under 19s team. It's pretty interesting here. It's just a mess, really. And I even offered a load of these guys new contracts because they look semi-decent. But who am I kidding? There's no way I'm going to be able to develop youth on this game because I don't even know how to train them up. Hopefully Brian Laudrup does, though, because he is in charge of training. So at the start of the season, I didn't have an idea really of what I was going to do. I didn't have that many wingers. I had a load of strikers, so I thought, well, a 4-3-3. And we went for a bit of a 4-3-3 counter here, which kind of worked in some circumstances. In one game, actually, it did really well. I'll speak about that in a minute. But over time, the lack of an extra midfielder, some teams in this league were lining up with 5 midfielders, which they were just steamrolling me with. I felt that I couldn't cope with it. And by the end of it, honestly, I was just trying any formation, a 5-3-2. I played this like once or twice. Played that a few times. That's probably not even a good formation. As you can see, most of these lack width. And I think if you want a good counter-attacking formation, you really need a bit of width. The reason I didn't have width, certainly in the midfield areas, was because I didn't have any suitable wingers. That was the point. So I went out, signed Jason Dare. I had a few right wingers, but I prefer to use them centrally. But I just forced people like Balboni and Stevenson out wide. And by the end of it, I came up with I'll have to try and recreate it real quickly. It was a defensive 4-4-2 that was basically counter-attacking. The idea was 2 banks of 4, lob the ball out to the wings, get balls into the box, create opportunity and behind the opposition defence. It actually worked really well, except my strikers were shambolic in the politest possible way. They were awful. You can tell that here because the goals I conceded is actually the best for anyone in the bottom 4, but my goals scored is the second worst. Only Motherwell scored less than me. They just couldn't score at times. That was a real issue behind this tactic. There's not much we can do about it now, but yeah, I went with this tactic towards the latter end of the season and it seemed to work really, really well, as you will see. So, after all that about the team, let's speak about the game. So, I had a few pre-season friendlies here, nothing spectacular. Lost to Berwick, kind of embarrassing because they're in the league below us, but again, it's only a friendly. We drew with Wolves, which is good because they are a championship team in England. Lost to Exeter, which, well, they're a conference national team in England, so that's slightly embarrassing, but there you go. Beat Dumbarton, thrashed Auchinleck Talbot, although no surprises there as they're an amateur team in Scotland. There's the scorers there, if you're interested. Then we got into the league season. I see only two of my games were chosen for TV. No surprise, given the fact that I did so badly. They were probably like, we're not bringing the TV back here, the camera's back here. Fortunately, I didn't lose either of them. Both of them were against our rivals Dundee. But yeah, first game of the season on TV, 6 o'clock start on a Sunday. It was Dundee. We actually played really well. Gary McSwagan scored a penalty for them, put them ahead, but then Scott Wilson equalised for us, and Stephen Hislop netted the winner just before half-time, and we held out. Stephen Hislop was another player that played for us in the first division last season. But yeah, so we got 3 points in our first game. We then faced Hibs away from home, managed to nab a point, although they did score with 17 minutes left, which was a bit annoying. Scott Wilson scored our goal on 57 minutes. Then came our first defeat of the season, 2-0 defeat to Aberdeen. As you can see, Kim Fotheringham unfortunately got an own goal. Garry Brady was red carded. Oh, that's one thing I want to do. I want to check the team stats. Red and yellow card. Yellow card. Oh, look at that. Proudly sitting top of the table. I knew we would be top. We were just so bad this year, like so dirty. Okay, Motherwell are miles ahead in the red cards table, but we are top of the yellow cards table. Doesn't surprise me in the slightest. Just interested to see that because I saw Garry Brady got sent off there. Anyway, so first defeat of the season to Aberdeen, not great. We then played Kilmarnock. Could have done so much better, but there you go. Noel Whelan scored early for us. But then they just went and scored 3, including one in the last minute, which I guess was when we were chasing the game, but we dropped points there. Then our best game of the season, best performance, thrashed Rangers 3-0. They were the holders, they'd won the league last year. Craig Dargo scored on 43 minutes. He then added a second just after half-time. Then, 2 minutes later, Stephen Hislop got the third, and that completed the scoring. Rangers had no reply. If you want a bit of context for league position, at that point we were actually... Well, we were third in the table after match 2. After the win against Rangers, we were 5th. So we were punching above our weight here. We were in the top half of the table. Things were looking good, but then things could... when things are that good, they can only... There's only one way for them to go, and that is right back down to earth. Right down to here. Now, as you can see here, there is a reason why I'm happy with 11th place. Interesting story for you. I was reading an article, this is probably going back about 12 years. In real life, we actually beat Rangers at Ibrox when we were a first division team, and our chairman mentioned a theory that when teams won at Ibrox, they would then go on a bad run. Now obviously this wasn't at Ibrox, this was a home game, but maybe the omens were true for us, as following the Rangers game, you can see here, we just lost so many games, and we only scored like 3 goals in, what's that, 4 goals? 5 goals? That's 16 games, 16 games, 5 goals, 1 point. That is all we got from those 16 games, and that effectively took us right to the bottom of the table. For comparison, Motherwell were bottom at the start, then they got a bit of a lift there, and then we were jostling for position, and then obviously they finished bottom. But our run of 16 games, 15 in the league with just 1 point, took us all the way here. But as you can see here, 2-1 defeat to Dundee United, who got our goal there. Garry Brady. We must have been chasing the game at that point. It was probably too little too late. This was a League Cup game against Clyde, who are in the division below. But as you can see, Clyde went and scored twice in the second half to win by 2 clear goals. We then lost to Livingston, we lost to Motherwell, we lost to Dunfermline, Celtic. I should add that at this point I had a change of tactics. For this Livingston game, I'd been going for a 4-3-3. You can't show formations in this, unfortunately, but just take my word for it, I'd been going for a 4-3-3. It wasn't working, so I thought, right, I'll switch and go really, really defensive, 5-3-2. And as a result, we lost to Motherwell. Could probably have won that game. We then lost to Dunfermline, another game we could probably have won. And we gave away so many penalties as well, which was pretty annoying. We lost to Celtic only by 2 goals, which I was pretty happy with. A 2-0 defeat to Celtic's a moral victory, trust me. We then got only points from those 16 games, a 1-1 draw with Dundee. Noel Whelan scored on 8 minutes, and then McSwigan got a penalty and scored it against us, which was kind of annoying, but there you go. A point is better than a 3-0 defeat as we got in the next game against Aberdeen, then a 2-0 defeat against Tibbs. I'm pretty sure we conceded a lot of early goals. Well, yeah, we conceded a lot of early goals. We then lost 1-0 to Kilmarnock. Yeah, look, a 2-minute goal, and then the rest of the game was, it just kind of passed us by. We then lost 3-1 to Dundee United. Our goal was scored by Alan Mahood. Lost 5-0 to Rangers, 4-0 to Hearts, 3-1 to Livingston. Craig Dargo got our goal there. Look, another early goal. And then 2... Look at that, that is so unfortunate. James McPake scored twice in the last few minutes. I wonder if I was chasing the win there. Anyway, whatever. Point is, we lost late on in that game. And then we lost 2-0 to Dunfermline, who weren't exactly doing that well themselves. And all through this run, I just could not figure out a way to take us out of it, if you know what I mean. As you can see here, there are players down here with very poor morale. These are players who haven't been on a winning team or done well in a game since the bad run, okay? Because the problem was, every single one of these players had a very, very poor morale. In the modern versions of Football Manager, you can talk to players, you can have team meetings, you can talk about them in the media and press conferences. There's so many ways now to affect morale, but in this one, I've not really found, apart from winning games, there's no really good way of improving the morale. And as I've discovered, morale is, in this version, very, very, very important. I'm sure it's important in all versions, but in this version it is especially important to winning games. Throughout all of this 16 game run or whatever it was, the morale was just very, very poor. They just could not play. They were giving away sloppy goals. The keeper was atrocious. And I just, like, no matter what I tried, there was no way back for me. Legitimately, there was no way back for me. And as you can see, that is why we were on the bottom for so long. What's that? Week 16, that's 12 weeks or 12 games we were on the bottom of the table. But the turnaround did eventually happen. Our form picked up a bit. We did lose a fair amount of games, but we also won a few, drew a few. In fact, we were undefeated in the post-split fixtures. Okay, we only got 1 win and like 4 draws, but still, undefeated in the post-split fixtures is pretty good, given how bad we were here. So where did the turnaround happen? Well, as you can see here, we had a Scottish Cup game against St Mirren. Oh, by the way, I should also add that throughout this entire process of losing 16 games, I kid you not, the board conference was very good. Like, it's not as, obviously, the board confidence screen isn't as advanced as it is now or as detailed, but throughout the entire thing, the fans were happy, the board were happy. You know, it's like, oh, you're doing a bad job, but we're happy with your performance. I'm guessing it's because I got promoted with them, so I've kind of got some sort of trust with the board, and they were willing to give me a chance. I think even if I got relegated, I would have been okay, because the aim was to fight against relegation, not necessarily avoid it. And we fought against it, and we avoided it. Back here in the, this is like January, I wasn't so sure. We had a Scottish Cup game against St Mirren, who were in the division below us, so it was a chance to build morale. We won 3-1. Charlie Adam equalised after David McKenna had given St Mirren the lead. Then Noel Whelan scored our second just after half-time, and then he netted a penalty on 87 minutes to give us the win. And Brian McGinty was also sent off for St Mirren, which no doubt helped us. So, a win, which no doubt improved morale ever so slightly. And that went into the next game against Motherwell, who at this point were second bottom of the league. So this was a big game. Second bottom Motherwell against ourselves, and we managed to win 3-0, which again improved morale a lot. At this point I changed to a 4-4-2 counter-attacking formation. I'd brought in the wingers, I made the changes that were necessary. Tactically inept describes me very well, because often I have no idea what I'm doing, and throughout the 16 game run where we only got one draw, I had no clue what was going on. I usually was just chopping and changing. I think one of the biggest factors wasn't just morale, but the fact that my formations were either too exposed at the back, such as the 4-3-3, or that's more exposed in midfield. But the point is, going in defence it wasn't so strong, or it wasn't so good going forward. Like the 5-3-2 I had wasn't so great. But now I found a good balance with a 4-4-2 counter-attacking one. We won this game against Motherwell 3-0. Garry Brady scored on 7 minutes, and then Noel Whelan added a double just after the hour mark on 60 minutes and on 63 minutes. 3 very valuable points. And then we followed that up with a great defeat against Celtic 4-1. Noel Whelan scored a penalty for us to actually equalise the game, but they just went out and won the game as they normally do. But Celtic game aside, we then won our next game against Dundee. Craig Dargo scored on 22 minutes. Noel Whelan then scored on 39 minutes. And that was that. We got the 3 points there. And those were 2 very valuable 3 points. Because at that point, I think we had 8 points. And Motherwell were a good 8 or 9 points ahead of us. And Dundee were actually our other relegation rivals. It was 3 of us. As you can see here, it's the 3 of us that are scrapping for relegation. Dunfermline are 12 points clear of Dundee, so they're not in it. But I got 2 wins against our 2 relegation rivals. Did I say promotion? I meant relegation rivals. Thumbs up there. Then, on the downside, we lost to Dundee United in the Cup. Got cream 4-0, 4 first half goals. Yep, you read it right. That's Jason Scotland playing against us, who's done so much for me in other Football Manager games. It was alright because it was just the Cup, so no worries there. But this was probably, I wouldn't say this was my biggest managerial mistake of the season, but we were playing Hibs, okay. They scored first, Gary O'Connor scored first, and then Noel Whelan equalised for us on 65 minutes. Now, at this point, I was thinking to myself, you know what, I could go for the win, because I think Motherwell were getting creamed or something. I just thought I would risk it for the biscuit. If we won, we would draw level with Motherwell for the first time in a while. We'd be off the bottom basically on goal difference. But it backfired. Gary O'Connor went and scored for Hibs, and we lost. That could have been costly. I was kicking myself after that, and I thought if we lose the league by a single point, or if we get relegated by a single point, it'll be this game. This will be the game that it'll be the defining moment. So yeah, that wasn't so good. We then went and drew 2-2 with Aberdeen. Pretty interesting game. Fernando Pasquinelli scored in the first minute. Ian Maxwell fortunately equalised on 35 minutes. Then Darren Mackey put Aberdeen back in front, although thankfully Ryan Stevenson was on hand to net an equaliser with 20 minutes remaining, and we held out for a share of the points in that game. We then went on and beat Kilmarnock, as you can see here. Ryan Stevenson scored early on 9 minutes. Noel Whelan added a second just after half time, and although Graham Bain went and pulled one back for Kilmarnock, we held out and got a very, very valuable 3 points. Kilmarnock actually finished, well, they were a top half team, so that was a very, very good victory, and away from home as well. So far, so good. We are gradually making ground on the teams above us. I don't think we're off the bottom yet, but we're getting there. And all this time, Motherwell weren't looking promising, so it was all good for us. Unfortunately, we then lost our next 2 games. Now, the game against Rangers was an interesting one. I saw it was Rangers and I thought to myself, right, I appreciate we beat Rangers last time when we were at home, but it's highly unlikely we're going to be beating them again. So what I did was, I had, as you can see here, my team is split in morale. Loads of them are happy, some of them is very poor. This split was a lot closer back when I played Rangers, so maybe about half the players, let's just say 11 players, had a superb morale because we just won and were doing well, and the rest of the squad were all very poor. So my idea was, in order to preserve the superb morale of the starting 11, I put in the people with a very poor morale, I put them into the Rangers game. It's almost like playing an understrength side in a way. I figured I didn't want the people with good morale to suffer and therefore lose morale, and then my whole entire team would have been, lacking in morale. See, the thing is, the reason Motherwell went down was early in the season, all of these guys they had very poor morale, but I was trying to save the morale of some of my players for the important games. So that was an interesting thing I've never really tried before. Tried it in this game. I didn't expect to win. I lined up with like a 5-3-2 or something. Lost 2-0. Not the biggest deal in the world. It's only 2-0. And it's only Rangers. Unfortunately, it kind of backfired next game as we lost 2-0 to Dundee United. I'm guessing I played a full strength team here. It looks like it. So yeah, lost 2 games there. But the morale was still intact even despite the Dundee United loss. Then we drew with Hearts, which was very important. Mark de Vries scored early for Hearts, but Jason dared to get an equaliser, and indeed got an equaliser for us just after half-time. That was an awful pun, and it didn't even make sense, so I do apologise. Back to same old, unfortunately, against Livingston. We actually did really well in this game. We could have easily made it a draw, but for one lapse in concentration where this guy, Stuart Greeken, went and scored a header against us. So yeah, 1 goal in 4 games. Doesn't look that good, but it was fine because against Dunfermline we managed to get a point. Oh man, this was a tight game. Paul Shearer missed a penalty, not great. Derek Young scored for Dunfermline, but 7 minutes from time, Michael Moore netted for us to give us a share of the points. Very, very important. At this point, I think that was actually the game it took us off the bottom for the last time. That was the last time we were bottom of the league all season, which was fantastic. So that was a draw against Dunfermline. Bit of a crunch time with Motherwell. We were levelling points with them at the bottom of the league. We had to beat them. Thankfully we did. It's quite an interesting one because their manager actually said, "We will beat you," basically before the game. Some of my players were motivated by it, which was good. And then, as you can see, Ryan Stevenson scored in 12 minutes. Alan Mahood got a goal on 28 minutes. And it stayed like that. And we won the game and never looked back after that. Okay, well, apart from that time we got creamed 5-0 by Celtic. Again, I used similar tactics to the Rangers game. I played a team that had very poor morale. Played a pretty defensive formation. As you can see, they were 3-4-0 up inside the first half. So, not much we could do. Also, Mark Birchall got sent off. At the end of the season, we put together a little bit of an unbeaten run, which fills me with some hope for next season. We drew 0-0 with Livingston, partly thanks to the fact they had three players injured and missed a penalty, but that's by the by. Dundee, we drew 0-0 with them. This was actually a very frustrating game and just revealed to me how inept my strikers were. Now, don't get me wrong, my strikers that day, Michael Moore and Noel Whelan, they're both decent players, but we had 16 shots and only 6 of them on target. Dundee didn't do that much better, but that just sums it up for the entire season. We just get so many shots and miss every single one of them. I'm convinced that teams would play a high line against us in defence because they knew that even if one of our strikers ran onto a ball, there'd be no way we'd be finishing off the chance. So I just don't get it. Anyway, that was a 0-0 draw against Dundee. We then played Motherwell, and if we won this game, we would survive. This was a game that relegated Motherwell, in effect. Michael Moore scored on 7 minutes. Noel Whelan then netted a penalty on 34 minutes. He got his second of the game and our third on 48 minutes. And Steve McConaughey, a few minutes after missing a sitter, netted our fourth on the hour mark. And that completed the scoring. Gary Mason actually got sent off for Motherwell after 28 minutes. It was 1-0 at that point, so that probably helped us quite a bit. And then Paul Sheeran went and missed a penalty, second penalty that he's missed recently, so he's probably getting taken off penalties, if I remember. But yeah, this was a game that saved us, which was very, very, very promising. Business as usual was resumed later in the next game as we drew 0-0 with Dunfermline. Then we completed the season with our only point against Dundee United. We lost to them there, we lost to them there, we lost to them there, and we lost them there. Yeah, so our first point against Dundee United. Jason Scotland again scored it in the first half, 35 minutes gone, and then Michael Moore once again saved us with 7 minutes remaining, and we got points. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough to get 10th place, but we're not 12th, that's the main thing. There was one team in the league that was worse than us, so Motherwell must have been so bad to finish below us, because this team was just absolutely inept. And the sad thing is, my reflections of the season. Oh yeah, I should point out, I meant to point this out, in awards, right? Player of the Month, Alan Mahood won it in September for some reason. I'm guessing that's off the back of... We only won one game in September. Yeah, it must be off the back of good performances in the games we lost and the Rangers game. But whatever. Anyway, that's just by the by. The sad thing is, though, this team, it arguably should be a lot better. I feel like I did get my tactics wrong in the early part of the season with the team being set up either too frail in midfield or not good enough going forward, which is why we maybe didn't score as much as we should have. But obviously the strikers aren't that good, as proven by the lack of goals and the number of shots missed. The defence is okay. I'm not so worried about the defence. The goalkeeping situation is this guy made way too many mistakes, so he's getting sold. Or he's not getting sold, I'm just going to release him at the end of his contract. Craig Sampson's contracted for another 2 years, so I don't really have a choice. We do have Kevin Cuthbert coming back, although his mentals aren't that good. They seem to be okay. Well, I don't know, I don't trust him. I hate to say it. He didn't even do that well against... yeah, look, he never kept a single clean sheet in 18 games for Wraith Rovers. And yeah, there's only a few of these players going out of contract. The only players going out of contract are Kevin Fotheringham and the keeper that I just mentioned. Graham Holmes was the only loan signing I made, and he only played once. And the sad thing is, the only game he played, he got a 3. Look, average rating 3. That is the worst average rating I've ever seen in Football Manager. But I don't just want to sign anyone, that's what I'm saying. I probably made too many mistakes with signing just players that looked half decent. Like, Mark Campbell looks half decent, but is he SPL class? Maybe not. All my strikers are contracted for at least another year. Michael Moore, I even signed him on until 2010 because I saw someone was after him, and I'm like, I'm not letting him go on a free. Although I might end up selling him, even though he got a few important goals for us at the end of the season. I need to look at my squad and really think about where I'm going. I would like to, next season, I would like to push for further up the table. But if this season's anything to go by, it's clearly that the challenge is so much harder. I need to be smarter when it comes to the transfer dealings. Hopefully I'll get some cash for some of these players. I might even have to cash in on important players, and yeah, I don't know. We'll wait and see. Don't think there was anything else for me to really say. Anyway, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed. I will see you when I see you.